first, welcome, both of you. Thank you for joining us today. Before we dive into the two questions, I'd love to turn it over to you and give you about 2 minutes each to just describe the overall tutoring program that you have in your district or your state. And so we'll start with you, Michelle, first, and then turn it over to you, Hannah.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary Ellen, and it's great to be here. New Mexico started on this journey with Saga in November of 2021. We originally went direct to districts, having them partner with Saga. We soon realized that they were not taking advantage of the resource that we at the State Department were actually paying for at the time. And so we pivoted in August of 22, and we decided to start our own program from the public education department and hire our own tutors and go direct to families in an after-school model for Algebra 1. We rolled that out in January of 2023. We had a great response of about 500 to 600 students that actually enrolled. However, what we quickly learned was that we were competing against many after school programs, dance and choir and different things. And so we had about 150 that consistently participated. Those 150 parents and students had nothing but great things to say about the program, had nothing but great things to say about their progress in actually getting to where they needed to be with their peers in their Algebra 1 content. So we decided that the after-school model was not the best model for New Mexico. And so we partnered with PLI and UChicago and MDRC to do some research in middle math in New Mexico, specifically targeting small and rural districts in the state. And so we now have partnered with 19 of our rural and small schools and are serving about 500 middle math students. And we are excited to see the end of this year's data. We have preliminary data that shows that our students are showing progress, but it'll be nice to actually have that data at the very end.
Thank you, Michelle.
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Zay, and I come from Fulton County Schools. Fulton is one of the large metro districts in Atlanta, Georgia. So to give you kind of an idea of how large Fulton is, it's a little over 60 miles long from tip to tip. There are a little over 100 schools within our district. So to kind of give you a little bit of a better idea, like 59 elementaries, 19 middle schools, 18 high schools, 7 charters, and a virtual school. We are large and we are diverse. So our tutoring started very quickly after COVID and with the ESSER funding. We were one of the first districts to actually begin the tutoring process to get learning acceleration going and to support our students. We really have a two type of tutoring model. So we had an RFP go out for tutoring vendors in our schools. So we have outside vendors that support our district. And so with that RFP, we had criteria for those outside vendors to propose working with our students. And those were both virtual and in-person vendors. At the start, we had many virtual vendors and a few who could offer in person. And that was K-12, as well as putting one paraprofessional position into every one of our elementary schools that would offer high dosage tutoring once we came back live in person following COVID. So every school across our district was provided based on a funding allocation funds to provide high dosage tutoring, as well as extended learning and some other programs to provide high dosage tutoring in their building. And they were able to not only provide tutoring with the paraprofessional at elementary, but also utilize these vendors and these outside vendors to provide the tutoring both during the day and after school virtually, as well as some of our extended learning programs. Each of the schools were able to decide whether they were going to serve mathematics or English language arts based on their in particular needs because of the diversity of our schools. So there are a lot of different models that were occurring across the district based on the diversity of those particular schools. In 2022-23, we also decided to partner with the PLI study and MDRC. As we looked ahead at our tutoring models, we had the question of how can we continue this tutoring high dosage as well as make this work more sustainable. So in that partnering, that's where I really came in to lead both the grant management and the project management of taking some of our highest risk schools in a particular zone of Fulton County and working with the PLI study to ask what populations most need a high dosage model and which populations could use a more sustainable model of tutoring. So at that time, when we partnered with the PLI study, we first went down to 14 schools, 14 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school. And we learned a lot. And that was in our first year with the PLI study, a lot about scheduling, a lot about partnerships with outside vendors. This year, we took that learning and applied it to narrow down to continue with the study with 8 elementaries, 4 middles, and 1 high school as we continue this learning. Across our district, though, we maintain the high dosage tutoring to this day.
Well, thank you both for highlighting what y'all have done. And what's interesting that you both said is how you've done and grown from learning that happened in the beginning to make some changes and adjust. So one of the first things that I'd like to hear from both of you is thinking about the scheduling and how are you finding the time for tutoring to happen during the school day? And what modifications, if any, did you have to make from year to year as your program either grew or changed? So I'll turn over to you first, Michelle, and then back to Hannah.
So we have a very interesting perspective coming from the State Department. So we're not actually embedded in a district. And so when we partnered with our 19 schools, small and rural schools, it became a very intimate partnership in that we were able to have relationships and really work with them one-on-one on trying to figure out and support them in their scheduling and matrixing. So all of our 19 schools have done it a little differently, surprisingly. We have some that had advisory hours that they've extended to add some time on for about a 40-minute period. We have some that it comes right on the heels of instruction in a hour and 15-minute class period. They've taken half of that class period and then half of that class period for high impact tutoring. We had some that reworked their entire schedules to add in a class period, stealing time from lunch periods and time from their passing periods to kind of get that time within their schedules. So it was kind of very interesting, that process for New Mexico at our level, working with each one of them. I will tell you, we did have some districts or some schools that were said, hey, we just can't figure this out. We've got so much packed in. And even when we offered, they were still a bit reluctant. But overall, I think that everybody could see that they could embed it if they were just creative thinkers in looking at their schedules in a different way rather than that very traditional. We also have folks that are doing it 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 3 days a week. So that also provided that flexibility for them to not take students away from their elective courses. We really wanted to make sure that students were not being punished for participating. And because we did a lottery, we didn't lottery the students in the school, we lotteried the grade level. So everybody, if they had a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, if 6th grade was chosen, everybody, regardless of whether they needed the support or not, received the high impact tutoring in our program.
Thank you, Michelle. Hannah, would you like to say how y'all have done it at a district level?
Absolutely. There's so many things that I would second and third and applaud, as you said. So the one thing I want to echo is absolutely flexibility. And there is not just one way to do this. So you can have a beautiful master plan in how you would want to schedule it at the district level or the state level or even a school level. But when it really comes down to it, being able to be flexible and nimble is one of the keys that we've found for success. So, for example, one of the things that we learned with the tutoring is that we needed to be able to adjust once we started. If you had that beautiful schedule in place, particularly at the elementary schedule was going to change because something in that particular zone that the zone was going to do, the zone superintendent was going to do for a power hour, it was going to change the schedule for the whole day, which was going to impact the tutor schedule. So we had to be able to be flexible. We also had to think creatively. For example, where tutoring might have previously just been part of the RTI block, we wanted to think differently. So students who might have a particular tier 2 intervention, we didn't want them to miss out on tutoring in a different subject or in a different way. So maybe tutoring could happen at other times in the day. One of the things we thought about is an elementary, when we have a station rotation or we have larger blocks of time, how could tutors become part of that classroom and become part of that station rotation so that students and the tutors become part of the classroom and they actually receive their tutoring during that instructional time, but they get their tier 1 instruction. They also get their tutoring intervention, and later during that tiered intervention time, they get their RTI intervention. So it was really thinking in creative different ways and being okay with the schedule not being perfect. Very much to what you were speaking about in New Mexico at the secondary level, we knew that this could not be seen socially and emotionally as a punishment. We could not take students out of connections. We could not expect high school students to leave X, Y, or Z and come to a tutoring session. They were not going to come. Expecting them to log on just because they were supposed to. So things we learned in the second year of implementation were we needed live tutors to make connections with our students and build relationships. And at the middle school and high school level, we needed it built into the regular schedule of the day rather than being a replacement or taking them out. So at the middle school level, the tutoring actually became part of their on-level mathematics course for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They are on a 70-minute period. So they had their regular instruction the first part of the period. And when they broke out into the independent work, the tutors were there in the classroom as part of that learning instruction. And at the high school level, it actually became, for Algebra 1, the algebra support class. So this high school is on a block schedule. So A day is Algebra 1 that all students take, and B day is algebra support, which is where our tutors and our teachers were. And it became how we did business for all students. And it made all the difference.
Yeah, thank you both. And from what you both said, it's clear that there's not a one size fits all solution to scheduling. When you're talking about high impact tutoring that happens, 3 times a week for a minimum of 30 minutes with a consistent tutor that is working on grade level material, you really have to be creative and work with the schools to see what works for them in order to make sure that the tutoring fits in to their schedules.